Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Let's begin today by looking at the first level of pattern making, which is making a basic bodice pattern. This is basically the part of the garments that you wear on the upper part of your body. The basic bodice is a great starting point for pattern making, simply because from this pattern you can make other styles or you can create other patterns. For example, if you want to make a blouse, you need a basic bodice pattern, a blazer. This is a good starting point for you amongst others. Before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the family. First things first, you need basic measurements for this pattern. Note that the figures that I show you on the screen are my actual body measurements, and you have to take similar measurements for your body. You also need a scissors. Be sure that you're using a paper scissors. Do not use the same scissors that you use for fabrics to cut paper. You need a marker, you need your tape, and you need a ruler. To make this process even easier, you can purchase pattern making rulers. There's actually a special set of rulers that is used for pattern making. I do not have them right now, that's why I'm using a straight ruler. So to start, I have folded off my pattern paper in half to make for the front and back of my bodice. And in case you don't know where to get pattern paper, I actually get them from Dollar Tree, and you can make several patterns of one roll for just $1. This is a really affordable investment to make. I'm drawing a straight line about 1 inch into the paper to serve as my starting points for all the other measurements that we are going to take. From there, I'm measuring 10 inch downward, which is my shoulder to bust measurement. Then 6 inches, which is my bust to waist measurement. And another 8 inches, which is my waist to hip measurement. So at the end, I had a total of 24 inches from that shoulder line all the way to my hip line. Now I'm just double checking to make sure that my measurements are accurate. After marking the 3 points, I'm extending the lines across. Be sure that the lines are very straight for accuracy and that they will eventually reflect your true body structure. After drawing those lines, I'm just going ahead to label the lines so I don't get confused eventually. So I have the bust line, I have the waist line, and the hip line. Let's go back to the initial shoulder line that we had. Starting at the fold, measure 3 inches for your neck width. From the 3-inch point, mark 5 inches further as your shoulder width. These are all standard measurements. If we go ahead this way, we are assuming that our shoulders are a straight line. But in reality, our shoulders are slopey and not straight. So I'm going to drop that shoulder point on my shoulder line by 1 inch and connect that point to the neck width. Next, I'm measuring my front neck depth. This can be anywhere between 3.5 inches to 4 inches. I decided to use 4 inches. And along the same line, I measured the back neck depth of 1.5 inches. You can leave that at 1 inch if you like. I'm connecting both points to the initial neck width with a curve. I'm just going to freehand this since I don't have any pattern rulers. The shorter curve is your back neck depth and the longer one is the front neck depth. At this point, we need to determine the upper chest measurement, and the standard formula for this is your bust measurement divided by 6 plus an allowance of 1.5 to allow enough room for arm movement. In my case, I have 8 inches. I'm drawing a straight line from my original shoulder measurement to accommodate that. After connecting the 8-inch measurement to the shoulder line, I'm going to draw another line to mimic the bust line, and I'm labeling that upper chest. Now let's determine our armhole. I'm dividing the previous 8-inch line in half, which gives me 4 inches. And from the 4-inch mark, I mark another 3/4 of an inch inwards. This measurement is very crucial because this is what distinguishes the front armhole from the back armhole. To complete the armhole, I need an end point, and I do not have one yet. Let's go ahead and work with the horizontal lines to get that. We are going to revisit the armhole later. Before we move on, remember that we have our pattern paper folded in half. Therefore, we are only creating our pattern for 1/4 of the bodice since we are going to be cutting it on fold. This directly translates to dividing all our measurements by 4. For my upper chest and bust line, I am dividing the measurements by 4 and adding 0.5 inch to the result. In my case, I have 9.5 inches plus 0.5, that gives me 10 inches. And I'm going ahead to mark that on that line. For the waistline, I divide my measurements by 4 and I'm adding an extra 1 inch to accommodate my darts. We'll create the darts as we go along. For my hip line, I'm just measuring my hip measurements by 4 without any extra additions, and that gave me 10 inches. Next, I'm connecting all 3 points with straight lines. Be sure to curve around the waist since our waists are not that sharp. Now let's go back and attend to our armhole. For the front armhole, I'm just drawing a curve from my shoulder point through the 3/4 inch points that we had marked earlier and blend it into the upper chest line. Again, I'm just going to freehand this, but this is much easier if you have a pattern ruler. Now this is your front armhole. Notice that we had dropped it inwards by 3/4 of an inch, and this is to create more room for the bust area. The back armhole is actually a similar curve apart from the fact that it passes through the actual midpoint of the line. Now let's move on to create darts for this garment. The darts actually help to provide shape to your garment and they are often folded in. Remember that we had added 1 inch allowance to our waistline to accommodate this measurement. To get the dart point, divide your nipple to nipple measurement. In my case, I had 8 inches. You divide that by 2, it gives me 4 inches. This point is also called your bust point measurement. I'm also marking the same 4-inch measurement on the bust and the hip lines. I also have to determine the length of my dart, which is why I'm going to drop the point on my bust line by 1 inch and from my hip line by 2 inches. After dropping the bust and the hip points, I'm connecting the 3 middle points with a straight line. To accommodate the 1 inch that we had added on the waistline, I'm measuring 0.5 inches on both sides of the midpoint. To finish off, I'm connecting the newly created points to the middle line with straight lines, and voila! Our front darts are ready. Now you can go ahead and cut out this pattern as it is, but you need to account for allowance when cutting out fabric pieces. But then your best practice is to add 1 inch allowance on your pattern, which is what I'm doing now. Measure 1 inch all around the pattern and connect the lines or the dots following the shape of the pattern. For some reason I skipped recording that part, but I'm sorry guys, I'm just going to explain what I did. So I've added my allowance, and as you can see I have cut out the pattern including the allowance. Also notice that I have cut out the pattern following the outer measurement or the back measurement so that I can keep the back piece intact, and I'm going to finish working off with the front later. So because I have this paper folded for the front and back pieces, I cut out the pattern following the back pieces, because if you should cut it out following the front, then you're going to destroy the back piece of the bodice. So that is just what I did here. The next thing to do is to separate the front and the back piece on the fold. And all I'm going to do after this is to transfer the important lines to the back piece of the bodice. The important lines I'm referring to here are your upper chest measurement, your bust, your waist, and your hip. This will help us to determine the back darts. The front and back of your bodice is basically the same, except the difference comes with the neck depth, the armhole, and the darts. We have taken care of the armhole and neck depth already on the back pattern. I'm also transferring my dart measurements from the front bodice to the back. The only difference is the length of the dart. Instead of dropping the point on the bust line, my dart is going to start 1 inch below the upper chest line, and every other measurement remains the same. Don't forget that our front piece accommodated a 1 inch allowance, so I'm going ahead to mark the 1 inch allowance on the back bodice as well. To finish off, I am cutting out the front neck depth and the armhole. With that, my friends, we have come to the end of this video, and I hope you did learn something new in this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and also share this video with your friends. Give this video a thumbs up if you did find this content helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.